Gun control regulations are on the rise in Virginia, and I think over 100 counties at this point, maybe it's 95 last I checked, 95 counties or more have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries, saying they're not going to enforce these gun control measures. Well, there's going to be a huge rally in Richmond. They've declared a state of emergency. Things are getting hot, and what may be one of the weirdest stories I've ever seen. Antifa group to march alongside pro-gun protesters in Virginia. That's right. Antifa flags and MAGA hats side by side, pure chaos. See, I thought Virginia was going to spark the revolution. I thought it was going to be civil war, and a lot of people were concerned. With the Democrats in power in Virginia, them seizing guns, you would see conservatives take action, defend themselves. There was talk about the National Guard coming in, conspiracies run rampant about the UN soldiers and all this other nonsense. Likely not true, by the way. But Antifa agrees with the conservatives on the Second Amendment. They view the Democrats as establishment imperialist cronies who are going to take away their rights. And now, what may have been the start of the Civil War may actually be the end of it. The establishment may be dying. It could be over. Look, man, for the longest time, the establishment has been assailed left and right. Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump. The establishment media and the Democrats tried to cheat. They stopped Bernie, but they could not stop Donald Trump. Now we are seeing, although there is fierce anger between these two factions, they're both united against the Democrats taking away their weapons. I'll tell you what, man. It doesn't make sense. It's as weird as it may be. It makes sense. Antifa is about challenging the system. They don't like Democrats. They hate liberals too. And if the liberals are going to take away their means of self-defense and empower police who they view as racist, of course Antifa wants to defend gun rights. This is one thing that a lot of people on the left don't understand. When these establishment types in media defend Antifa, I'm laughing like, you know, they come for you first, right? Antifa spray paints really offensive and terrifying threats on the walls at Berkeley I can't repeat. Threats against liberals. Because the liberals are the intellectual elites who stand in their way. The ones who agree with the system, who want to reform the system and stop them from having their revolution. Naturally, they're going to stand side by side with anybody who allows them to have weapons. Now, conservatives view it more as a combination of our traditional rights, our constitutional rights, and one thing standing in the way from a tyrannical government. The difference between the two, in my perspective, having talked to and understanding these people, is the far left wants a revolution. If they want to do that, they need weapons. If the government and the quote, racist police come and take their weapons away, they can't have the revolution. Conservatives want to defend their system, their freedom, their liberties from the encroaching tyrannical government, or from even foreign threats, right? Therefore, they will defend their constitutional right to have firearms. But there is an overlap. Both are concerned about tyrannical systems, which is the craziest thing to me, right? I was in Berkeley a couple of years ago. It was the battle for Berkeley. You guys remember that? I was talking to some Antifa dude who had a weapon. And he was saying that all the Trump supporters, everybody there, they were fascists. And I was like, you think these people right here, pointed at the park, I was like, you think they're fascists? Like, they are fascists. And I was like, you realize they're like preaching right now about the Second Amendment and gun rights because they're terrified of a tyrannical government taking over and they want to resist that. And the dude actually was like, oh, yeah, like, wait a minute. Look, they might not be communists, but where Antifa and conservatives agree is that if a tyrannical government has power, it must be stopped. Now, the problem with Antifa is they think regular Americans represent the government. It's insane. And then they go and actually attack people who would probably agree with them. Listen, you know what was really crazy to me? There was this dude, I think it was in Minnesota. I think his name, I'm not sure if it was Alton Sterling or what the guy's name was. But there was this dude, he was a black dude, legally allowed and permitted to be carrying a firearm. A cop killed the dude, man. He gets pulled over. The cop's like, you know, what's going on? Talks to him, and the dude, doing everything right, says, I also have, you know, my gun on me. And the cop pulls his gun, freaks out, and he's like, don't move, and shoots the guy. You know what's crazy to me? A lot of conservatives stood up and said, where is the NRA? Where are the other conservatives defending this guy's right to bear arms? He was killed by a cop. and he was legally carrying. And I was pissed off at that. I was seriously mad. The left, of course, came out saying Black Lives Matter, and there were a lot of conservatives, but I would have preferred to see a major movement, from people saying this is wrong, cops shouldn't have done this. Because when the government kills you because you were legally armed, whether it was a panic moment or because they just are evil people, it needs to be condemned. Now, back to the main point. The problem with Antifa is they're a bunch of, stupid kids for the most part. They have no idea what's going on. I can respect their fear of tyrannical government, but I can't respect them bashing innocent people over the head. I can respect them wanting to defend the Second Amendment. I got that. My position is kind of like I'm more moderate on gun control, but I do think the Constitution is the Constitution. As much as I might not agree with, some of the weapons that exist and, some of the regulations that are in place, I kind of feel like, man, I like my rights under the Constitution. I can't advocate for taking anyone else's away because they'd advocate for taking mine away. So as long as 2A exists, hey, you want to ratify, you want to change, amend the Constitution, you got to do that first. Anyway, let's read this story. From the Daily Caller, they say Antifa group to march alongside pro-gun protesters. A diverse gathering of pro-gun protesters set to descend upon Virginia's capital on Monday would include an unlikely ally, a local Antifa group, in what Vice called a bizarre meeting of the minds. Richmond-based Antifa 7 Hills also strongly opposes the gun measures now likely to become law since Democrats won control of both Virginia houses last year, and they too want Democratic leaders in Richmond to know. Quote, I think it's been pretty important for us to focus on the fact that gun control in America has a legacy of racist enforcement, an Antifa 7 Hills spokesperson called James, a self-identified anarchist who withheld his real name for fear of getting doxxed, told Vice. Like taking guns away from black people because black people were perceived as a threat to property and the sanctity of the state. This is our fight as much as anyone else's, James continued. It's our state, and we are left largely out of the debate. The presence of an armed left is not discussed. It's not understood. I'll tell you something, man. I've seen some videos, and I believe it's fair to say, because I've been down to gun rallies. I was down in Texas. The armed and trained left have been the most cool-headed out of any of the left-wing protesters. Not always. But you look at like the right-wing militia groups, they tend to have good discipline. They're calm, collected, and they try and keep things simmered down. Like in Boston, there were 3%ers and Oath Keepers trying to stop people from fighting. I have seen some videos where there's left-wing armed factions, and they look very similar in terms of the right-wing militias, although they have, sickles and hammers and stuff. But they're much more cool, calm, and collected and trying to simmer things down than the average protester on the left. That's a fact. I think it has to come with understanding the power that, and the responsibility of having a firearm. You have to be calm, collected, and disciplined to wield it properly. So I'm not saying all of them. I've seen some dumb kids trying to go out and get weapons. But these older guys who are actually trained, actually go out to ranges and stuff, yeah, they're probably equally shocked by these laws in Virginia, because they understand what happens when the state takes away your weapons. To the armed left, gun control represents the rise of a police state and the oppression of minorities made powerless by disarmament. But it's a class issue as well. But I think the right would agree largely with you on this. Maybe not so much about like the racial stuff, but to an extent, yes, absolutely. I'd be willing to bet you go and talk to a conservative. Well, if you're a conservative, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'd imagine if you had a bunch of people on the left complaining about an oppressive police force, and they said to the government, how do we stop this? They said, well, if evil people, not necessarily cops, I'm saying if like you need to defend yourself from a tyrannical government, what do you think 2A is for? Now, the challenge to that is everyone always says, and it's mostly the establishment left, what are you going to do? Go after cops? You can't, right? And this is what gets scary. Because when police are breaking the law, how do you stop it without escalating or going after cops? This is a serious, serious challenge. And I got to admit, I don't think Antifa or most conservatives are willing to step up and do what they have to do. There was one viral video recently where cops were going to serve like a red flag law, and the dude completely disarmed himself, and he was like, I don't got anything on me, but you better not come in here. I think that probably was the right thing to do, but at a certain point, if we did have a tyrannical government, which I don't think we do, I think these people overreact, what would anyone really do? I don't know. I don't know where that line is. They say, in the case of Antifa 7 Hills, They believe they've got more in common with working class white Virginians, regardless of their political bent, than they do with many of the moderate Democrats who helped their party win control of the legislature in November for the first time since '94. Vice reported, adding that the group sees the coming January 20th rally as an opportunity to extend an olive branch to other gun owners, at least those who don't align with far-right militias or white supremacists who are also expected to show up at the event. I'll tell you this, man, those people will probably show up. But listen, if you're defending your individual liberties from a tyrannical government, you're going to find you're standing side by side with people you don't agree with. I think all that matters, that you believe in individual liberty. Now, these Antifa groups tend to be communist. Well, some of them are anarchists, far-left anarchists. But listen, if your group wants to go do their thing, set up a farm and have your farm, defend your farm. Protect your way of life. I respect that. Just don't tell me what I have to do. That's authoritarianism. While Antifa groups in other areas, particularly the West Coast, often practice and condone violence against their political enemies and have even been called a major organization of terror by Donald Trump, James says his group takes a different approach. I think what's particular about the South is that we have to be a bit more creative and sensitive to the people around us, instead of fulfilling some sort of meme of what Antifa is. That's really what we're trying to work against right now, especially by talking to conservatives and showing we aren't just a black-clad group of rabble-rousers who are out for attention and have jobs funded by George Soros. James declined to discuss the group's plans should white supremacist groups join the protest. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam has declared a state of emergency and banned firearms on Capitol grounds. I think this is a hot-button issue, man. I mean, this is a chance to really, really light up. We have a state of emergency being declared over this. Ralph Northam is a disgusting person, if you were to ask me. His tepid non-answer on the Virginia abortion bill, his history of certain photographs, and now what he's doing with gun control. This dude is an establishment piece of trash. I typically avoid insulting people, but I am no fan of this guy. I think he's a weaselly, awful dude. And this is what you get when you vote. Well, listen. You know my problem right now with liberals is? Of course I got a problem with the Democratic establishment. My problem with liberals is that basically they're passive and they vote for in their naivety and their ignorance and selfishness. When they ignore these things, you end up with politicians who exploit you to get what they want to empower themselves. Make no mistake, these politicians are armed, their guards are armed, but they will take away your right to protect yourself and your family in 2 seconds. They will vote to increase their salaries. They will vote to empower themselves and to shut you down. They don't care about you. They will lie, cheat, and steal every second of every day. So I'll hand it to that Antifa group. You got my respect if you want to defend individual liberties in the Constitution, by all means. I got no problem if you're a communist, man, right? If you're a communist, but you denounce the violence and want to have a conversation, man, we can talk all day and night. I think it'd be a great conversation. But when you come out attacking people with clubs and promoting violence and stuff, well, now we got a problem. Here's what I say to people, and I'll wrap it up here. I don't care if you want to dress up like a clown and walk around the street juggling bananas. You go do your thing. It's when you start throwing those bananas at people, that's when I'm going to intervene to stop you. So when Antifa wants to come out and they want to protest against somebody, they want free speech, they want to defend, even hear gun rights, my respect. You do you. You want to engage in civil disobedience, sitting in a street, blocking cars? I'm even down with that, absolutely. You get arrested for it, because I believe civil disobedience can be a good way to press on the system. To a certain degree, we do have to break the law when laws are unjust. But when Antifa comes out clubs, now you cross the line. Now you're becoming like statist authoritarian monsters. I'll leave it there, though. Crazy story. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. YouTube.com/Timcast, and I will see you all there.